So, welcome to the Conversion Podcast, the official Banbridge Rugby Club podcast, where we share stories, memories, and people who've made the club what it is today. I'm Tori, one of the players of the first women's rugby team, and our first episode, we're kicking off with a couple of club legends here, David Dodds and Kenny McElroy. We'll start at the beginning then. So, how did you both get involved with Banbridge Rugby Club?
As I was still at Banbridge Academy when I was asked if I wanted a game for the club. Um, I don't remember much of the details, who we played or whether we won or not, but I obviously enjoyed it. I think that was 1965, and I probably played a few more games uh, while I was playing for the school as well. Um, until I left the academy in '66. And then I joined the club proper for the next season, which was '66, '67. And
Nice.
I played every Saturday then, which was the way it was then. You played every Saturday and kept every Saturday free for rugby.
Fair enough, yes. And Kenny, yourself?
Yeah, well, I joined the club in 1964. I played rugby at the academy when I was there, but I then had played football initially with my own local village team in Guildford United, as they were called. They were very successful at that time. We won quite a few Mid-Ulster trophies. And then I played for Newry Town. And then after a pretty heavy thumping at Larne at Edinburgh Park, I was the goalkeeper. I was dropped, and at the same time, I was suffering from a toe injury. And then I came up to watch a friend of mine, Cyril Anderson, actually playing scrum half for the first. And I met Tommy Alls, who at that time was the stalwart in the club. And he asked me, why don't you come up and, give rugby a try? And eventually I played a couple of games for the thirds and a few games for the seconds. And then I made it on to the first. And then I played for the first for quite a few seasons after that. Yeah.
It must have been good then to get on the first so quickly then.
Well, the club wasn't as strong as it would have been, today. But anyway, it was very enjoyable and something I look back on with, great memories. Yeah.
Lovely. What is your favorite experience or your favorite match that you've ever played? Or
Well, on a personal level, I suppose one of the highlights of my time playing for the club was when the Senior Cup, which at that time was a major competition, sadly has become slightly relegated today. But we were drawn against what at that time was one of the big star clubs in Ireland. They were called North of Ireland. They were based in Belfast. And Mike Gibson, actually, who was the Brian O'Driscoll of his day and really a world star,
yeah.
he actually lined up against us here
Oh wow.
at Rifle Park on the undulating slopes of Rifle Park. Just 2 weeks previously, he had actually played at the Parc des Princes against France.
Oh wow.
And 2 weeks later, he was playing here at Rifle Park. We had one of the biggest crowds actually, watching the match that we had had for many, many years. And it was a great occasion. And I have to say, that's one of the standout memories.
Sounds like an amazing experience to be up against somebody so tenured.
Yeah, that North team actually had about 3 Irish internationals and about 4 Ulster players as well.
Oh
And
wow.
so it was a really big experience.
Love it. David, what was your favorite experience?
I suppose there were some matches certainly played against on probably senior friendlies when we were up against players who at that time were Ulster Ireland players. But I suppose best memory I have was the 74-75 season when we won the league and got promotion. And that, I suppose, was the first promotion for quite a number of years. So that probably concluded my time on the first as a regular player.
Oh,
Once
yeah.
I was no longer captain, I wasn't a regular pick, but that was a good season.
That sounds amazing.
Considering when David took over as captain, we had quite a few mediocre seasons. In fact, one year, sadly, Richard Timpney was captain. The first actually didn't win one league match.
Oh
And
no.
so David came in with a lot of new ideas and, of course, his coaching ability. And that really was seen as the turning point in the club's fortunes, where we sort of reversed the trend of sort of slipping down the league tables and beginning the march back up the tables again.
Wow, big shoes to fill then, David.
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah. It was nice to be part of that revival, I suppose you'd call it, of club fortunes.
Definitely.
Mhm.
Yeah. Onwards and upwards and all of that. Whenever you look back, what were those early days sort of like? The facilities, the people?
I I suppose I always enjoyed my time there. There were some wonderful characters, but it was probably what you would call course rugby.
Okay.
In that the pitches the players wouldn't play under today. I
No.
mean the old Rifle Park pitches had a big slope side to side on them. Anytime there was heavy rain, the seconds pitch came underwater,
I
or
know.
part of it did. There were cow pats all over the pitch early season, and it was just a different experience.
Yeah.
And what some wonderful characters. The one who comes to mind, and can you remember him, is a big guy called Liam O'Callaghan, who was acting an actor, and when he played, he seemed to foam at the mouth nearly, and he was a big guy, grizzled you'd call him, but he must have struck fear into the opposition because he had all that look of hairy monster, you know.
Oh God.
But this wonderful knack,
Mm.
because he was an actor, he had great memory, and he
Yeah.
could recite the 35 verses of a
Oh,
poem.
Danger
Oh,
Stan
eh?
McGrew and what have you.
The
Yeah, yeah,
Ballad of Dan McGrew.
yeah, yeah.
So there were some great
Mm.
characters at that time.
Wow. And what about yourself, your
Yeah, well,
experiences?
obviously, as David said, basically facilities and the playing pitches were very, very Spartan. But that was not unique to Banbridge, because basically most of the provincial clubs, played on what you can only describe as farmland. It
Okay.
was only the big clubs in Belfast, that had proper uh, pitches that were well drained and proper clubhouses. Um, so basically, we were no different really to many of the other provincial clubs that played in very, very similar conditions as well. Back then, of course, there was no fancy clubhouses either, and virtually every club would have had its own bar in their town where they socialised. For example, the Downshire, a very famous one here
Yeah.
in Banbridge. Newry had the Boulevard, which nothing to do with the Boulevard in Banbridge today. You had Ballynahinch drank in a bar called the White Horse.
Okay.
Lurgan drank in Ralph Hewitt's. Armagh drank in the Beresford. These were all very, very famous rugby hostelries. And at that time, sing songs is a big part of rugby life as well. And I can remember some very happy Saturday nights in the Downshire in front of the big roaring fire with some fantastic, sing songs as well.
Oh, I love
The other thing that comes to mind for me is the training. Of course, we had to train uh, more or less in the dark then, but we could eventually get fixed up with some old gas lights. And there used to be an old shed at the top of the old pitch, so you had to go up early and haul out these two gas lights and get them lit. And what do you call the little thing you used to the thing in the mantle?
The
You
mantle,
used to
yeah.
have the mantle lit,
Mm,
and those shed a light down really 122, and that was
it.
your training area. And of course, because there are only lights on one side of the pitch, there were lots of shadows. So and then eventually we got to a point where we got a line of lights down the back of the houses there, and got a connection through. Somebody gave us, an old former player gave us a connection into his garage,
Oh,
and
nice.
there was a line of lights down the side of the pitch, but it was primitive at the start.
It's not like our well manicured pitches now
yeah, yeah.
with the
A
big
far cry,
floodlights.
a far cry.
Oh, no, it sounds like a completely different experience to what we're used to nowadays. A lot has changed in rugby, even in the club here, over the years. What stands out to you most?
Well, the numbers, of course, have been the big thing, and the introduction, um, firstly, of mini rugby in the 70s, and then youth rugby in the 90s, and then girls rugby and women's rugby more recently. And
Mm.
that has not just increased the playing, strength, but increase the number of families involved in the club.
Yeah.
So, and I come up on a Saturday, I'm just amazed at the number of parents who are watching on, parents who are involved in the little tuck shop and providing coffee. And the numbers around the club now have just mushroomed out of all belief, really, from where we started.
Yeah, there's a lot of support now compared to probably what it used to be,
Yeah.
like with all of those taken into consideration. But can I, anything that stands out to you, the
Yeah,
changes
well,
or
basically, again, you see, when we were, the clubhouse was really the old stables at the back of the Downshire. A lot of the catering for visiting teams would have done either in the Downshire or possibly some of the local fish and chip shops, would you believe, as well?
nice?
Fusco's.
Fosco's or Scabatucci's. And so basically, the club was comparatively small at one time. We were down to about two teams. So really, we all grew up together in that sort of era. We all were good friends. We've seen people, meeting their girlfriends, later getting married. We've seen their families growing up. And we've seen the kids actually starting, in many occasions, playing for the club. And it was very much a very family orientated club then.
Yeah,
The one thing I'm pleased to see is that even though the club has rapidly expanded, we still have that same camaraderie, and it still is, very much a family orientated club.
yeah. I think that's one thing to say for the club. It is completely based around community.
And it's also great to see the recurring names, that have been so familiar with Banbridge Rugby,
Yeah,
and who have contributed. Some of those families have contributed so much to the success story of where Banbridge is today.
yeah,
I think
definitely.
one of the things that uh, expanded the nature of the club was the introduction of youth rugby. And although it initially, those youth teams were primarily dependent on academy players because the academy weren't playing Saturday rugby. But when Saturday rugby resumed, then we've got more players in from the high school and from Rathfriland.
Mhm.
And I remember at one stage in the first decade of the century, one of the forward packs we put out, seven of the eight forwards had originated in Banbridge High School.
No way.
And I thought that was fantastic,
Um,
because like most clubs in those early days, you were dependent on the grammar school stream to provide players. But now we have players from the academy still coming with the high school. We have our Friland High School, we have Newbridge. So our catchment has expanded, and that has been a
definitely.
great thing as well. And also, by its very nature, then you're getting more families from a wider community into the club.
Yeah, it's great to see it expand, and even now with the women's rugby, you do see a lot more coming from different areas, which is it was always good to see.
I think the club has also benefited over the last 20 to 25 years from, I suppose, as the change in the GAA rules, which allowed players from that Gaelic background to play rugby as well. That has certainly benefited our youth teams, boys and girls. And now the women's teams are equally strengthened by the inclusion of those Gaelic players that come over with those basic skills of handling and kicking, which are common in both games and both
Yeah.
traditions. Um, so that's good to see that catchment extend not just geographically, but also in terms of, I suppose you could say, culturally, where we're getting all sections of the community involved.
Now we're entering this sort of huge milestone, 100 years, of Banbridge Rugby Club. What does that mean to you personally, David?
Um, I'm just glad I'm here to see it
Yeah.
in the first place.
Yeah.
But it's terrific, to look back on it and reflect and to see where we are now and where we've come from.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the club will continue to grow in whatever way and provide an opportunity for young people and not so young to play what I think is the best sport and the best team sport in the world.
Yeah. What do you hope for the next sort of 100 years?
Um, Well, I think the one thing you have to accept is that while we've risen through the ranks from the third tier, maybe fourth tier of junior rugby in Ulster to at one stage the second tier of All Ireland rugby, um, we'll not always fly high,
Yeah.
and there's a cycle to these things, and we have to accept that there'll be dips, and then at other times we'll come again. But so long as we focus on the core values of the club, which is to provide an opportunity, as I say, for young players to play to the limit of the limit of their ability, and to provide that opportunity for players who at one time, if they wanted to play top club rugby, would have had to move elsewhere,
Hmm.
but now they can play for their hometown club in senior rugby in Ireland, and I think that's a wonderful thing.
I agree with you completely there.
Mm.
Kenny, what about yourself? The 100 years, how do you?
Yeah, well, as I said, David and I joined both closely at the same time,
Mhm.
1964. So when you think about it now, that's 61 years ago.
Wow.
And we have seen, the club, sort of mature, from those very, very simple beginnings to where we are in Ulster rugby today. But I would like to think that the next 100 years would bring succeeding generations of Banbridge rugby players, every bit as much as um, the happy memories and the camaraderie and all those enduring memories that we have of playing this great game here in the town of Banbridge.
Yeah, I hope that as well. I'd love to say in 60 years that I've been here the whole time and see as much as what yous have seen. Um, it's great to know that there is those sort of peaks and troughs, as you said, David, but
Mm.
also a really bright future for Banbridge Rugby here. Is there anything that you guys want to say that we've missed or anything extra to add?
A centenary is not really just a time to celebrate, but I think also to commemorate and remember all those hardy individuals, players, officials, backup people who have, over that 100 years, have made Banbridge into the club that it is today. And many of those stalwarts, sadly, did not live to see this momentous occasion in the club's history.
And of course, sometimes we think of the club as the first, and everybody wants to see the first doing well. But the club's strength is that we have five teams, and all players are equally valued, and all get out of it what they put into it. And there's a great deal of effort put in by volunteers in the seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths, the minis, the youth teams, girls, women's. There's so many volunteers who are working so hard. So it's a 100 years celebration of all the work from everybody involved in the club.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, just a quick nod to a few things that are happening around the club in the new year. So in January, also a centenary weekend at the end of January, the 23rd, 24th, and 25th. There will be multiple matches throughout the weekend. There's Ban versus Banbridge Academy, former pupils, Banbridge versus Ballymena in an AIL match. There's also many youth and women's matches on that weekend. In February, we have a past captains and presidents lunch, which is a thank you to all those who've led the club over the past 100 years. In March, the old guard returns, which is ban over 35s versus the perennials RFC over 35s. In April, we've got a giving back to the community event. There's 100 bags for 100 years. We also have our annual club awards dinner. And then in May, we have a big tournament for our mixed ability. So, David and Kenny, thank you so much for starting us off with such a powerful reminder of what Banbridge Rugby stands for. As we celebrate a century of rugby, this podcast is just more than just matches. It's about people who've made this place a home. From all of us here at the Conversion Podcast, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.